Julien Devereux. He was born in San Francisco and grew up in the Bay Area and in rural central Texas, learning from an early age that America is a land of contrasts. He graduated from Reed College in 1997 and has worked as an editor and writer for magazines and newspapers and nonprofits ever since. He lives in Austin with his wife and 2 children. Julien.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so this is an excerpt from a novel I've been working on with a working title of The War Between the States, but it's not about the Civil War, don't worry. David and Bobby walked into their biology class, which like half their classes was taught by a football coach. Everybody called them Coach, not Mister, even if you weren't on their team and they weren't your coach. This one was called Coach Nichols. Every day he wore a polyester knit polo shirt tucked into pants that looked like they had a built-in belt. The pants were always the same color, a light blue. David wondered whether he had only one pair, or maybe 5, 7, or even more, all hanging in a closet, ready for the week. He looked every day to see if he could identify a stain or a loose string that would identify a pair as unique, so he could tell. The pants were always clean, with a sharp crease down the middle and utterly indistinguishable from each other, if indeed there was more than one pair of pants at the Nichols home. David found it hard to imagine what his home was like and pictured him in a bare apartment alone, eating potato salad out of a plastic tub. It was unclear why he was a biology teacher. The football coaches seemed to have been assigned randomly to their subjects. David thought, and he only liked one, Coach Dickerson, who taught English and was kind to all of his students. Coach Tidwell, who taught history, made his students copy word for word his history lectures, which he would read slowly, repeating each sentence so that the students could make sure they had copied it down exactly. Their notebooks were graded for accuracy and neatness. David had refused even to begin, and instead, while the coach read slowly, he filled his notebook with doodles of dinosaurs and fossils and Civil War battles with enormous pencil gray explosions, firing cannons, and dead bleeding stick figures on the rocks of Little Round Top at Gettysburg. He also wrote lists of things he remembered from California that he never saw in Texas. VW bugs, rainbow flags, hippies, women with no makeup, TV shows, Ultraman, Star Blazers, Spectre Man, Captain Cosmic, Star Wars action figures, Grateful Dead Steal Your Face bumper stickers and t-shirts, hills, the ocean, fog, a certain kind of sunlight. His dad and his friends and his old blue shoes that were probably in an old box now are thrown away along with everything else. Coach Nichols was trying to tell the class something important, David could tell. He was talking to the class, but looking at the ceiling in the back, as if there was somebody hidden up there above the white panels. "We're going to skip chapter 3 of your text, folks," he drawled, as David saw the fluorescent tubes from the ceiling light reflected in his bifocals. "It has some discussion in there that's not proven and not necessary to understand biology and health and things like that and whatnot. So tonight read chapter 4, and that's what'll be on the test next week." David looked around at the other students. Their faces were bored. Kyle, to his right, was peeling sunburned skin from his forearm slowly, his legs sprawled out ahead of him. David took his book out and turned to chapter 3. Somebody had rubber stamped something above the chapter title, which was evolution, and the stamp read, "All information in this chapter about evolution is presented as theory, not fact." The picture on the opening page was of an ape-like man, naked but with one leg striding forward to conceal his private parts. He carried a spear and was tracking some big sloth-like creatures while a volcano smoldered in the distance behind him. The stark plain with its low trees and shrubs looked just like Texas. David stared into the illustration of the volcano. He wondered if he could make it erupt if he looked at it long enough. But his eyes kept being drawn to the caveman guy walking across Texas. His face was almost a smile, or maybe he was surprised or confused. It didn't seem strange at all to imagine him as the ancestor of everybody in their shadowless classroom. If the caveman came to present-day Donaldson, what would he do? Probably join the Baptist church and reject evolution like Coach Nichols, David thought. Biology was the second to last class of the day, and David looked at the clock and wiped his hands on his corduroys. Since the last time his stepfather had gotten drunk and wrecked the house, it had been about a month, and a month was usually the longest he went. David had to be ready to slip out the window and into the woods if necessary. His stepfather had sometimes tried to be kind to David. He once bought him a machine that polished rocks. It had to be kept in the shed because it ran for days and was loud, but it did polish rocks nicely. David was more interested in fossils than rocks, but was grateful anyway. Randall also tried to show him how to fight, emphasizing especially dirty surprise tricks like kneeing people in the groin or gouging their eyes. He seemed to think there were more fights at his school than there actually were. Randall had bought rabbits, white and pink-eyed, and he and David helped make hutches for them out of 2x4s and chicken wire. David mostly held the wood when Randall hammered or sawed or stapled. When they were finished, they stood about 4 feet high. The chicken wire on the bottom was so the rabbit poop would drop directly onto the ground and you didn't have to clean the hutch out. There was hay in the hutches for them to sleep on. Their fur was soft, but they didn't cuddle like a cat. They were always wary, frightened, though they would usually tolerate being picked up by the scruff. Randall's plan was to sell most of them and eat some of them. David didn't want to ask how they would be killed and prepared for dinner. In bed that night, David listened to transmissions from other planets. The cheap little stereo his mother had bought him from Walmart played records, but mostly he listened to a radio station in Dallas that came in better at night. It played new wave music. And tonight, Soft Cell's Tainted Love had come on while he was falling asleep, but it woke him up. Was he still asleep? He was aware of his body, but it felt like it couldn't move. The drum machines hissed, and the funereal synthesizers and the singer's mournful voice, suggestive somehow of a sleaze and sexuality beyond his knowledge, frightened and thrilled him. It was opposite music, different in every respect from the self-pity and resignation of the country music that was played everywhere in Donaldson, even in the dentist's office and grocery store. The singer was probably English, probably gay, and the defiance and tragedy in his voice would instantly get him beat up here in Donaldson. Tendrils of smoke and squiggles of neon crawled up the walls of David's room as he lay there listening as the song transitioned into one that he had already heard, the Supremes' Baby Love. And even as the song faded into a commercial, it stuck in his head for the rest of the night. And he lay there half asleep, half awake, watching the shifting patterns squirm across his walls and ceiling, waiting for the bantam rooster in the tree outside his window to begin crowing. He decided he would smuggle this feeling into school tomorrow morning like a bomb.